The story begins in 1893, where a young 12-year-old boy from Germany named Hans Wilsdorf finds himself at a devastating crossroads. Both his parents pass away, leaving him orphaned at a tender age. The future seemed bleak as his relatives sold off his parents' business and decided to send him to a boarding school. Life at the boarding school was difficult, filled with uncertainty, but amidst all the challenges, Hans found solace in the company of a Swiss boy. This friendship turned out to be life-changing. Through countless conversations, Hans learned about Switzerland's remarkable watchmaking industry. Each detail fascinated him, and slowly, a seed of passion for watches and precision craftsmanship took root in his heart. Hans, despite his difficult circumstances, found a sense of purpose. At 19, in the year 1900, Hans decided to take a leap of faith. He left his home country and moved to Switzerland, determined to explore the watchmaking industry. He secured a job at a watch company named Cognos, where his role involved testing the accuracy of hundreds of watches daily. It was tedious, but Hans found joy in perfection. He dreamed of creating watches that would be more than just timekeepers. They would be symbols of reliability, elegance, and innovation. In 1903, Hans decided to move to London, hoping to explore better opportunities. But tragedy struck during his journey. His inheritance of 3,300 German gold marks, the last bit of wealth left by his parents, was stolen. This was a crushing blow. He had nothing left but his relentless passion and determination. In London, Hans took a job at a watch company in the sales and marketing department. Over the next 2 years, he gained valuable insights into consumer preferences and industry trends. He noticed something peculiar. Most watch companies focused on designing flashy, decorative watches, but consumers seemed to desire something else. What they truly wanted was simple, durable, and elegant timepieces. This realization ignited a spark in Hans. By 1905, at just 24 years old, Hans decided to start his own watch company. Without sufficient capital, he turned to his brother-in-law, who agreed to join him as a business partner in exchange for funding. Together, they founded Wilsdorf and Davis, a company that aimed to create high-quality watches. Their first product, the Portfolio Pocket Watch, was designed for travelers. Compact and housed in a sturdy leather pouch, it was an instant success. Despite this early achievement, Hans had a bigger vision. He believed wristwatches would one day replace pocket watches. In 1908, he wanted to give his watches a unique identity. He came up with over 100 names before settling on a short, elegant, and globally recognizable name, Rolex. The brand was officially trademarked that same year. Hans faced a new challenge in the watchmaking industry. Wristwatches of the time were highly vulnerable to dust, water, and damage. Hans saw an opportunity to change this. He began working on creating a watch that could endure tough conditions without compromising accuracy. In 1926, after years of development, Rolex unveiled the world's first waterproof watch, the Rolex Oyster. Its revolutionary design featured a screw-on case that tightly sealed the watch, preventing water and dust from entering. But Hans knew innovation alone wasn't enough. It needed the right marketing to make an impact. Around this time, Mercedes Gleitzer, a swimmer, was attempting to cross the English Channel. Hans reached out to her with an idea. He asked her to wear the Rolex Oyster around her neck during her swim to prove its waterproof capabilities. Although Mercedes couldn't complete the swim, the Oyster passed the test with flying colours. Hans capitalised on this success. He displayed the Rolex Oyster in fish tanks filled with water and live fish in retail stores, showcasing its durability in a bold and memorable way. The public was captivated, and the Rolex Oyster became a household name. This unique marketing strategy made Rolex Oyster's waterproofing features popular. Rolex's success touched another level. While the entire world was appreciating Hans, he wasn't satisfied. Actually, the watches of the time were completely mechanical. Instead of a battery, they were powered by a mainspring. The mainspring had to be tightened by rolling the crown. Once tightened, the mainspring would then unwind and move the hands. Simply speaking, it worked exactly like a wind-up toy. The watches had to be wound every 2 days. In the case of Rolex Oyster, if the crown wasn't properly shut after the winding process, water could easily seep in. That's why Hans's next goal was to build a fully automatic watch. Hans spent years solving this problem. Finally, he invented the Perpetual Rotor. This was a semicircular rotor which could rotate 360 degrees inside the watch. It was connected to the mainspring through multiple gears. It would rotate when a person's hand moved. The gears would then transfer the energy and tighten the mainspring. Basically, you could wind the mainspring simply by wearing the watch. This way, the watch could work perpetually, and it became known as the Rolex Oyster Perpetual. People had tried building automatic watches before, but Rolex was the first company to successfully adopt the mechanism. Perpetual made Rolex and Hans Wilsdorf legends of the watchmaking industry, but in 1939 they encountered another hurdle: World War II. The war disrupted the supply chain across the globe. Rolex's sales tanked again. In the upcoming years, Hans ensured the survival of Rolex despite all odds. But there was another tragedy. In 1944, he lost his wife. The last 6 years were the most challenging times for Hans. But he had seen such challenges since childhood and had developed a fighter mindset. So he regrouped his energy and set about the task he excelled at, making world-class watches. In 1945, Rolex completed its 40th anniversary. On this occasion, Rolex launched a new watch, Rolex Datejust. This was the world's first automatic watch that even showed date. But there was a problem. Some people had complained that they couldn't check the date as the display was tiny. Like always, Hans set out to find a solution. It said that one day, a drop of water fell on his watch. This allowed the date to appear magnified. Inspired by this, he added a 2.5x magnifying glass on Datejust watches and solved the problem. By 1960, Rolex launched other revolutionary watches. For instance, in 1953, it launched Rolex Explorer, a strong and unbreakable watch made especially for mountaineers and explorers so that they never have to worry about the watch getting damaged. In 1955, Rolex launched GMT Master, which featured a rotating bezel. It was made especially for pilots as they had to fly to different time zones. The bezel made it easier to track time. Finally, in 1960, Rolex launched an experimental watch called Deep Sea Special. It was designed to handle the extreme water pressure of the deep sea. To test this, it was taken to the deepest known ocean point of the 1960s, nearly 11,000 meters deep. The watch worked perfectly, even at this depth. This is how Rolex established itself as the king of the watchmaking industry. Be it the tip of Mount Everest or the deepest point in the ocean, there was only one watch brand that could handle these extreme conditions: Rolex. Hans achieved things with Rolex that no watchmaker could ever dream of achieving. In 1960, at the age of 79, Hans Wilsdorf left the world. But he left behind a watch brand that had made him immortal. This was the story of Rolex.